How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Yomi, Daf 25 of Masechta Zevachim. Friends, your friends. The first section of this. So this is going to be, I think, a little bit like a tricky daf. Yeah, kind of like tricky kind of stuff. Pipes and waters and streams and how we consider this and how we consider that and Tumah and Tara, like that kind of stuff. I hope it shouldn't be too difficult. Shabbos, the good thing is that Shabbos starts, Yontif, Sukkot starts in about an hour and a half, and maybe or less. I think maybe an hour and 20 minutes. So I won't hold you for too long, unless I'm going to have to finish tomorrow, but hopefully not. And so the first section of today's daf, we start a new Mishnah, and we start by talking about receiving sacrifice blood directly from the neck of the animal. Not from the floor, for example, directly from the neck. Next, receiving sacrifice blood directly over the vessel, sheesh, and then that gets into a whole thing. I will leave your curiosity not being able to contain itself to learn about what the whole thing is. Channeling purification waters. Now that sounds like a sugya I want to learn. And blemishing animals between shechitah and kabbalah. I feel like just the kind of introduction over here is really whetting our appetites over here. So anyways, this is what we have ahead of us in Daf Chof Hey, Daf 25 in Masechta Zevachim. Let us go for it. All right, friends, we are going to begin on Daf Chof Hey Omid Aleph at the Mishnah. Nishbach Adam al Ritzba v'Asaf Apostle. That is the Mishnah. That again, Nishbach Adam al Ritzba v'Asaf. If the blood of the korban fell on the floor and he gathered it up from the floor, apostle. And this is not talking about where he received the blood in the klisharis and then it fell on the floor. It's not talking about that. It's talking about he pashut slit the throat, and the animal pashut bled out onto the floor. And then he says, "Oh no!" and he tries to gather it together and collect it. Again, nishbach adam al ritzba v'asafo. If the blood spilled out onto the floor and he gathered it up from the floor, apostle. Zog the Gemara Tana Rabbanan the Rabbi Stat. V'lokach hakoyin amashiach midam apar. Okay, koyin Mashiach. Ever Horios vibes. The par koyin Mashiach and the koyin gadol. He takes midam apar, midam nefesh. We're talking about the blood of the soul, the main bloods, the bloods that drain out, and like the main flow of blood from the incision. V'lo midam or not blood from the hide, I guess if you like puncture the hide or something. V'lo midam, right, but we're talking about the main blood, right, because I guess if you like get a cut on your skin, you'll also bleed, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the blood that goes spurting out of the arteries when they are sliced. V'lo midam atamtzis, and not from like residual blood, I believe, like blood that is, I think, like left in the wound afterwards. We're talking about the main spurt of blood that bleeds out. I think I only saw a shechitah. I think I've seen a shechitah twice, but I don't remember them that good. But I think you like slit the throat and then like just blood goes like squirting. So it's the squirt that we're talking about. Midam hapar, dam mei hapar yikablenu. This is what's important for us. That you receive the blood directly from the cow, not from the floor. See, when it says midam apar, you see what we did there? Midam apar is learned dam mei hapar. So instead of midam hapar, it's dam mei hapar. We take the mem and we move it from the word dam and we place it by the word hapar. So dam mei hapar instead of midam hapar. So normally we would say midam hapar. So we would say something like midam v'lo kol adam, right? Again, if it was like midam v'afilu miktzas dam, even part of midam, even part of the blood. But v'omer Rav Yehuda Omer, so the Gozel Bach adds Rav Yehuda Omer Rav, not just Rav, and we're going to see this quote as Rav Yehuda Omer Rav later. V'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, hashoichet tzarich sheyikabel es kol damu shel par. Says Rav Yehuda Amar Rav that you have to receive all of the blood of the cow, not miktzos. So we can't say midam apar. It means afilu miktzos dam. No, it can't mean that because you have to receive all of the blood. Shneimar ve'es kol dam apar yishpoch. It says all of the blood of the cow. We're going to get to that limud more in a second. Ela midam apar dam me apar yikablenu. So rather, when it says midam apar, it doesn't mean midam apar like vafilu miktzos. No, it means dam me apar yikablenu. You should receive the dam directly from the cow, not from the floor. V'kasava gorin umosifin v'dorshin. And we hold, and Rav Yehuda Amar Rav holds. No, who holds? The Brisa, I guess the author of the Brisa holds that you can take a letter from one word and add it to another word. So, midam apar, you can take the mem and add it to the hapar, dam me hapar. Gufo, we said earlier, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, hashoichet tzarich sheyikabel es kol damu shel par, that you have to receive all of the blood from the cow. Shneimar Zebazon says, ve'es kol dam apar yishboch, that all of the blood of the cow you have to spill out. But one second, if we're talking about spilling out the blood, this kol adam yishboch hayisod hamizbeach, right? That's talking about the leftover blood that you're going to spill out on the yisod hamizbeach. We still haven't really gotten, I think, like a real mizbeach diagram yet. But anyways, the base of the mizbeach, you're going to spill out the leftover blood on. So if we're talking about yishpoch, spilling out, so then we're talking about the leftover blood, not the blood that you received during kabbalah's adam. But but at the same time, it also can't be talking about the leftover blood because it said ves kol damapar, all of the blood, and the leftovers is only what's left over after the nesinas hadam. So therefore, it's not talking about the leftovers. In fact, rather in the kabbalah, it's talking about the kabbalah sadam. That the kabbalah sadam, you have to receive all of the blood. So therefore, it can't be that you're receiving only part of the blood, and therefore it's not midam apar, it's dam me ha par. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, hashoichet tzarich sheyagbia sakin l'mayla. Says Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel that the shoichet, after slaughtering, what you do is after you slaughter the animal, you have to take the knife and you have to lift it up. And that way, to make sure that, you want to get the knife out of the way, because you want to make sure that all the blood that is going to be received in the vessel is blood coming from the animal, not blood that's dripping off of the knife. So you want to slaughter the animal and then lift up the knife to get it out of the way so it's not over the klisharis. So Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, again, hashoichet, the shoichet, tzarich sheyagbia sakin l'mayla, he has to lift up his knife above so that the blood won't drip off of the knife into the klisharis. Shenemar v'lokach midam apar, v'lo midam apar b'davar achar, they have to take from the blood of the cow, not from the blood of the cow and other blood, i.e. blood that's dripping off of the knife. I'm sorry, where am I? No, V'dam sakin b'may mekaneachle, and what do you wipe off, or where do you wipe off the blood of the knife? Amar Abai b'sfas mizrok. You wipe it off on the lip of the klisharis, of the receptacle. K'dichsiv k'forei zov, the golden bowls, and on these golden bowls you would have, I guess you would take the knife and you would wipe it off on the side of the lip of the golden bowl, and that's how you would wipe off your knife. Sounds like exciting times in the Beis HaMikdash. Chaver, we got any Kohanim over here? Chaver, we got any Kohanim here at Babble and Talmud? Who's a Kohen here? Raise your hand. Who's a Kohen here at Babble and Talmud? Does learning all the Masechta Zevachim, it gets you excited for the avodah of the Beis HaMikdash? You like working with animal blood? What's going to be your favorite korban? Korban chatas? You're gonna want to get your fingers in that blood. I imagine you probably get used to it. Maybe it's kind of fun. And now we move on to the second portion of today's daf, receiving sacrifice blood directly over the vessel, over the klisharis. Here we go. Amr Rav Chizda, Amr Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, hashoichet tzarich sheyitein v'ridin l'soich hakli. The shoichet needs to place the veins, the v'ridin, right? Basically, I think the point is you're going to slit the. Okay, so what do you have? Imagine you have the neck of an animal. Let's say like a sheep or something. It's got like a neck, and that neck is like horizontal, it's parallel to the ground. And then you have this klisharis, which is underneath the neck, and you make an incision in the neck, a slit in the neck, and then basically you need to make. So the interesting thing is that and this is going to be relevant a little bit later, that so if the neck is kind of parallel to the ground, and the veins and like the arteries and stuff are going along the neck, like they're like the wiring inside the neck, so to speak, and you're going to slit those veins, well, the blood is going to be spurting out. I don't know, I'm not a shechitah or something, but the Gemara talks about this. I imagine that this is the case, that the blood is going to be like spurting out like horizontally, in the same direction that the veins are flowing, at least initially. So what you want to do is so you have that klishares there, so you want to kind of get the incision kind of as close to the klishares as possible to make sure that blood is going to be spurting into the vessel. So you want to you want to kind of, as much as possible, I guess, place the incision, place those arteries into the klishares, into the vessel. Itmar Nami was also stated, Amr Reb Asim Reb Yochanan Vriden tzarich sheyiru over kli, that the veins, that the arteries need to see the inside of the vessel, the airspace of the vessel, that they should be over and facing the vessel so that the blood goes into the klishares. Reb Asi Reb Yochanan. Now Reb Asi asks Reb Yochanan, Oyo mekabel v'nifchisu shulei mizrak ad shelo yigia adam lo'ovir ma'u over shein sofa lanuach kimunach dami olav kimunach dami. Okie dokie. Chaver, what do you think this question means? Who wants to explain this question to us? So, what happens is the animal is slaughtered, and the blood is what do we say? Spurting? No, I don't think that was the word I said. Spurt. I don't know. Spurting? The squirting. The squirt. So you slaughter the animal, and the blood is squirting, and the blood is going to squirt into the klisharis. Okay. Now, so let's assume that the blood has at least a little bit, that the squirt has to pass through the air at least a little bit before it gets into the airspace of the klisharis. Okay, so you're holding this vessel, and then the blood is going to go into the vessel, but before it goes into the vessel, it's for at least a brief period of time, going to be over the vessel. Now, what happens if while the blood is over the vessel, but not yet in the vessel, the bottom of the vessel falls out, just opens up and falls out? So the question is, how do we treat, because as we learned in the Mishnah and in the Gemara, that the blood needs to be received from the animal. You can't just pick it up off the floor later. It has to be received in the klisharis from the animal. However, if the blood is received in a klisharis and then it spills out on the floor afterwards, I think we already learned about this maybe a week ago or something. Oh, nice. So I think that we already learned about if it falls out of the vessel onto the floor, you can pick it up. As it has to initially go into the vessel. So the question is, if the squirt is above the vessel, and then as the squirt is above the vessel, the bottom of the vessel falls out, which means that ultimately the squirt is never going to land in the vessel because the bottom fell out and it's never going to hit the bottom of the vessel. It's just going to hit the floor, essentially. It's going to go through the vessel and hit the floor. But still, can we consider it like the squirt did in fact land in the vessel, so that now you can then pick it up off the floor, or do you have to get a new animal? So that's the question. So again, Ba'amine Reb Asi Reb Yochanan. Reb Asi asked Reb Yochanan, Hoye mekabel, if they were doing kabbalah sadam, v'nifchesu shulei mizrak, and then the vessel, the bottom of the vessel, lets out and opens up, at shelo yigia dam lo'ovir, and the blood is not yet inside of the mizrak, inside of the klisharis. What now happens? Ovir she'ein sofa lanuach kimunach dami. When we say that the blood, which is above the vessel and is ultimately never going to land in the vessel because the bottom let out, can we nonetheless consider it as if it did land in the vessel? And therefore we can consider it like it landed in the vessel and you can then pick it up off the floor? Or do we say that it is not like it is we do not consider it like it landed in the vessel, and therefore it's just going to land on the floor, and you're not going to be able to salvage it. Omar le Tenisua. So Rabbi Yochanan says, well, we learn in a brisa, chovis shemunachas tachas hazinuk mayim shebesocha v'shebechutza la psulin. Oh boy. Tzirei pia lezinuk mayim shebesocha psulin v'shebechutza la ksherin. Oh boy. Okay, fine. So what is this talking about? Okay, sheesh. So this is talking about para aduma. Sheesh. Okay, this is talking about para aduma. Okay. So I also looked up this in the art scroll to make sure I was understanding it right. And actually the art scroll explains it differently than how I was understanding it. But I think I don't know, I had another look at Rashi. I think I'm understanding Rashi. Okay, so here's the deal. We're talking about para aduma. Now, by a para aduma, it says ma'im chaim el keli. You have to have stream water. You have to have ma'im chaim. So let's say you have water flowing down a mountain. And I guess that water flowing down a mountain, I guess would be acceptable for ma'im chaim el keli. So you have water flowing down a mountain, and then there's some kind of a pipe, I guess, in the mountain, and the water is flowing through the pipe, and that pipe just like is letting out over an abyss. And there's just this like stream of this flow of water, whatever, I guess, going down to an abyss, I guess. Now at the bottom of the abyss, or a canyon or whatever, at the bottom of like the flow of the water, there is a vessel. Now that vessel, there's no intention to be using that particular vessel for the Efer Para Aduma, which means that therefore any water that's collecting in that vessel is unusable for mechatas, for the Efer the Para Aduma to add to the to mix together with the ashes of the Para Aduma to make mechatas, which is the water with the ashes of the Para Aduma that you sprinkle on the person. So that water in the vessel is unusable because there's no intention to use the water in that vessel for the Para Aduma. The question is, what if I say, I'm looking for some mechatas. I'm looking for some mechatas for use for the Efer Para Aduma. And I say, wow, there's this cool pipe over here that's piping off of a mountain, and there's this flow of water coming from the pipe. Let me just take a vessel. I'm looking for mayim chaim for mechatas, and it looks like I found the mayim chaim flowing from this pipe off of the mountain. So now here's the tricky thing, friends. Not tricky because it's hard, but like here's what makes the scenario. Here's the curveball. Is it possible that the fact that there is this vessel at the bottom of the flow of water, I don't know what do I'm like struggling to get like the right word of this like water that's like kind of like flowing down out of this like pipe, and it's just like flowing, it's just dropping water, this flow of water, whatever. I don't know. Okay, I hope everybody understands what I'm describing. I would have, I think, made some kind of diagram or found a diagram, but there's just no time right now. I mean, Yom Tov starts in a few minutes. Every day has just been either Yom Tov, Erev Yom Tov. It's crazy. Anyways, so you say, great, I found this flow of water, Mayim Chaim. I'm going to use that for the mechatas. The thing is, do we say that this vessel that's at the bottom of the flow is basically ruining the whole thing? How so? Well, because this vessel, the vessel that's currently there at the bottom of the flow, there's no intention to use the water in that vessel for mechatas, and therefore the water in that vessel is unusable for the mechatas, which is the Efer Para Aduma. Now, so certainly any water in that vessel is unusable. And certainly if you take your vessel and place it in that vessel that's currently there, and then allow the water to fall into your vessel that's now inside of the vessel that's already there, this is where I differ from the article. I think that this is what Rashi is saying, that if you take your vessel and stick it inside the airspace of the vessel that's currently there, that will be possible. You won't be able to use that water. But here's the thing. What if you lift up your vessel and basically intercept the water before it lands in the vessel that's at the bottom there? That's the question, right? That's the question. Like, do we say, look, the vessel is at the bottom of that flow of water? It basically ruins the water, because not only does it affect the vessel, the water that's in the vessel, but any water that's ultimately going to land in the vessel, even if it isn't currently in the vessel, which relates to the question that we asked before a few minutes ago about the shechitah and the kabbalah sadam, right? If you have the blood that's going to fall in the vessel, but the bottom of the vessel has fallen out, do we say, well, it's no big deal, we could treat it, even though it hasn't yet landed in the vessel, as if it did land in the vessel? So now, coming back to the Mayim Chaim situation by the pipe on the mountain, so if we say that the water that hasn't yet landed in the vessel at the bottom of the flow, which is puzzle because it's not placed there to be used for Mayim Chaim, but if we say that the water that has not yet landed in the vessel is treated as if it has landed in the vessel, well, then you won't even be able to take your vessel, which you do want to use for Mayim Chaim, for the Parah Aduma, you won't be able to intercept that water and say, great, I have Mayim Chaim, because it would be considered like that water already landed in the vessel at the bottom, and any water in that vessel, since they aren't being intended to be used for Mayim Chaim, for Mechatas, any water in the vessel and also on its way to the vessel are going to be possible for paraduma, so you can't even intercept it because it's too late, because once it's over the vessel at the bottom, it's considered like it already landed in it. You understand the scenario? So let's read it again. So Amrle Tnisua, so Rabbi Yechanan says to Rabbi Asi, well, we learned in a brayso, Choviz shemunachas tachas anizok. So if you have this vessel at the bottom of the flow of this water, that the water from the pipe flows down into that vessel, and you have the vessel at the bottom, the vessel is not intended to be used for Parah Aduma. So Mayim shebesocha, any water that's in the vessel, and even if you take your own vessel and stick it into the vessel that's at the bottom and receive the water in that vessel, v'shebechutzala, and any water on its way down into the vessel, even though it's not yet in the vessel, psulin, they're all psulin because we view it as if it already landed in the vessel. Tserev pia lezinuk, but if what you did was, the vessel wasn't at the bottom of the flow, but you took the vessel and mamish touched it to the pipe, so that the pipe was flowing directly into the vessel. So i.e. there's two stages. The water is in the pipe and the water is in the vessel, nothing in between. Well then, so any of the water in this vessel is going to be psulin, because this is a vessel that is not intended for paraduma, but any water that's still in the pipe, ksherin, it will still be ksherin, because it's still in the pipe. It isn't yet in the ovir of the vessel. So we want to say that, so you see, water on its way into a vessel is considered like it's already in the vessel. The thing is, hi mai. We say, wait, what is this is apples and oranges. But Mine over she'ein sofo lanuach, Reb Asi asked Reb Yochanan about what happens when the bottom of the mizrak by the kabbalah sadam, when the bottom of the klisharis falls out, which means that the dam is never going to land in the klisharis because the bottom fell out. V'kaposhadle ovir shesofo lanuach. And Rabbi Yochanan is responding with a brayso which talks about when the water is going to land in the vessel, because the vessel does have a bottom. Those are apples and oranges. So So actually, Rabbi Asi had asked Rabbi Yochanan two questions. Lav Kimunach Dami. So first he had asked him about the situation with the klisharis in the Beis Hamikdash, where the bottom of the klisharis fell out, where the blood is not ultimately going to land in the klisharis because the bottom fell out. And even if you want to say that in that scenario it is not considered like it has landed in the klisharis, over shesofo lanuach, What about in the situation with the pipe and the water that is going to end up landing in the vessel at the bottom? What happens there? Rav Yosef Masni, that is how Rav Yosef learns it. So Rav Yosef learns it that Rav Asi asked Rav Yochanan two questions. The first one concerning what happens when the bottom of the klisharis falls out. And the second question is that, well, even if you want to say when the bottom falls out, it would not be considered like it landed in the klisharis. But what happens when the bottom doesn't fall out, like the water coming from the pipe? Rav Kahana, so he asked two separate questions. Rav Kahana masni chavis, ba'mineu fashad lechavis. Rav Kahana actually says no. Rav Asi never actually asked about the klisharis in the Beis Hamikdash. He had asked about the barrel at the bottom of the spout and the water flowing into it, and that is what Rabbi Yochanan answered him. Rabba masni chavis ba'minei. Rabba learns it as what Reb Asi had asked him was about a barrel. What happens when you have this barrel at the bottom of this flow of water? Ufashat le mizrak, and Rabbi Yochanan had answered him with a metaphor to the klisharis in the Beis Hamikdash, but in a scenario where the bottom didn't fall out. Certainly by a mizrak, there's going to have to be some zinuk, which is what I was saying a little bit earlier, that at least to a certain extent, there is going to be some blood above the vessel. Meaning, when it comes, right, so what happens? So Reb Asi, according to Rabbah, Reb Asi had asked Reb Yochanan, what happens in this scenario? You have the pipe, you have the water coming from the pipe and into that vessel. Do we consider it like it landed in the vessel? Here's the thing. When it comes to a korban in the Beis Hamikdash, so you slice open the throat of the animal, and as I was kind of saying earlier, the veins and arteries and stuff, they're horizontal, they're parallel to the ground, but the vessel is underneath the slice and the incision and perpendicular to it. So the blood is going to be squirting perpendicularly. It's not going to be squirting directly into the vessel. It's going to be going horizontal, at least for even just a brief amount of time, above the vessel. And yet we still consider it to be like the blood is coming directly from the animal, right? That was a requirement. We said, right, dam me hapar. The blood needs to come directly from the animal, which therefore means that blood which is above the klisharis, but not yet in the klisharis, is considered like it landed in the klisharis. So therefore, what happened was, according to Rabbah, Reb Asi asked him about this barrel underneath this flow of water coming from a mountain and a pipe, and Rabbi Yochanan had used a metaphor from Kabbalah Saddam and a klisharis to say that it is like the liquid above the vessel has already landed in the vessel. Alrighty, and now we get up to the third of four sections of today's daf, channeling purification waters. Ooh, now this is an exciting scenario. Okay, so here, this scenario is talking about where you have a mountain. Again, you have a mountain, but this time there's no pipe. This time there's no pipe for the waters to be channeled through and flowing down from the pipe. No. They're just flowing down the mountain. You have water flowing down the mountain. Now, again, in this scenario as well, there's a vessel at the bottom of the mountain, and you want the waters flowing down the mountain to get into the vessel. So what do you do? Friends, what do you do? Dennis, what do you say? Dennis, you want to take a stab at it? What do you do? You have water flowing down a mountain, and you have a vessel at the bottom of the mountain, and you want the water to land in the vessel. Keyword being land in the vessel. We're not talking about where you're going to just dip it into the water. No, you want the water to kind of float above and land in the vessel. So what you'll do is you'll make some kind of at some point you'll basically channel the water. So you have the water flowing down the mountain, and you'll create some kind of, I wish this would be great to have a diagram. But like, yeah, you have a mountain, and then imagine let's take like a diving board, just to come up with a random example for like the concept. You like take like some kind of a board, imagine like a diving board or something, they like stick into the side of the mountain, and now all of a sudden that water, it's like some kind of a dam of sorts, right? It's like that water now is going to stop flowing down the mountain, and you're now channeling it and like ramping it to kind of like go, it's almost like making like a half pipe kind of thing. Right? And the water is going to kind of like flow up this like half pipe that you're making, and it's now going to go and up and land now in your vessel. Right? Imagine how about this? You make like a swimming pool at the bottom of the mountain, and you want to get the water into the swimming pool. I guess it's like an above ground swimming pool, and you want to get the water, so you create like this like half pipe there so that all the water will kind of flow up the half pipe and fly in the air and land in your swimming pool. How's that description? Did it do the job? Anyways, so that's what we're talking about. The question is this ramp, I guess like a ramp of sorts, that the water is now going to like, be ramped up so that it could like arc and land in your above ground swimming pool. So this ramp, let's call it, or this channel, I'm going to call it a channel. I think it'll be easier from this point on. This channel, what is it made out of? That is what we're talking about. So, says the Gemara, Tananos, we learned in a Mishnah in Parit. Nosen Yodo, so what if you use your Yodo or Ragla? What if you use your hand or your foot as a channel? O ala Yerokis, or vegetable leaves to create this channel. Kadeshiavru Mayim Lechavis, so that you could channel water coming down a mountain to land in a vessel, in a barrel. Psulin, those are psulin. Alekonim vale egozim, but leaves of reeds or of nuts, ksherin, they are kosher. Zakal, this is the rule called Zakal. Dover amekabel tuma, so it's mekabel tuma, like people obviously can become tummy, or these vegetable leaves can become tummy. Psulin, they can't be used. If you want the water to be tahor, if you want them to be pure, you can't use something that's mekabel tuma. Dover she'eno mekabel tuma, but something that does not receive tuma, like these reeds and nuts or whatever, ksherin, those are permitted. How do we know this? Rabbi Yochanan says, Mishum Rabbi Yossi bar Abba Amar Kol, the pasuk says, Achmayon uvor mikveh mayim yiyeh tahor abiyosana yidei tar. If you want to have this stream or this mikveh, if you want to have the waters be pure, so then they have to have a yosana yidei tar. They have to come from an origin of purity. They have to be from things that cannot. They have to be channeled, but from things that are tahor, do not become tamei. Tehei. Amr Reb Chia, says Reb Chia, Amr Reb Yochanan, Zosomeres, Over kli kechli dami. So this teaches that the ovir, that when the water is above the vessel, it is like it's in the vessel. How come? Well, because we're saying that if, like, let's say you channel the water with your hand, so then it's possible, because it's going to go from your hand above the vessel, and it's going to be considered like it's coming from your hand. Even though it's not going directly from your hand to the vessel, it's above the vessel for a period, and yet we're saying it's possible because even when it's above the vessel, it's considered like it's in the vessel, and it's considered like it's going directly from your hand, which is Moshe Kabatuma, directly into the vessel. Maybe it's talking about where it like drips directly into the vessel. Not right. It's not talking about where it's like arcing over the vessel, but it's just like drip. I don't know what the right word is, but it's like just, I guess, dripping or something directly from your hand into the vessel. So Amalei Tarda, he says Tarda. What's it? Tarda? How do you define it? Shote Bahul. You shote Bahul, you. Kadesh Yavru Mayim Lechavis Tanan. It says that the water will pass into the chavis, not drip directly into the chavis. It says Reb Abba, it says Reb Chia bar Abba Reb Yochanan, that from the testimony of Reb Tzadik, this Mishnah was taught. Ditnan, that we learned in the Mishnah, hey, Reb Tzadik testified ala zochalin shekilchon ba'alei agozin, on flowing waters that you channeled them with nut leaves, shein ksherin, that they are ksherin because they are tahor. This was a ma'aseh, but Ohalia, in a place called Ohalia, of a ma'aseh from Chacham, belishkas agozis, and this scenario came before the Chacham, the Lishkas Hagazis V'Chshiru, and they said that it was kosher. And finally, the last section of today's daf. Wow, this is good. I'm actually moving through this, which is great. I'm actually gonna have everything recorded before Yontif. Not even running out of time, which means that it probably wasn't such a long daf. I don't know. We'll see. It's not done yet. Okay. Omer Reb Zera says Reb Zera Omer Reb Yochanan Atzorim Ozen Apar V'Achakach Kibel Damo. Possible. Interesting. So what if you slaughter a cow, and before you do the Zrikas Adam, I don't know what this means, because I imagine that it's probably pretty instant that the blood starts squirting. But anyways, you slaughter the cow, and before you, or maybe just like you slaughter it, and while you're removing the knife, you slit the ear of the cow, and that's a mum. You make a mum in the cow. So at the time that you did the shechitah of the cow was completely healthy, but by the time you're now doing kabbalah sadam, the cow is blemished. So is it kosher or not? So at sorim ozim apar, if somebody slits the ear of a cow, and then only afterwards you do the kabbalah sadam while the cow's ear has been slit, pasul, the cow is pasul, because you need the cow to be completely healthy and unblemished at the time of the kabbalah sadam. Shenemar, as the Pasuk says, v'lakach midam apar, that you will take from the blood of the cow. Par shahoya kvar, that you need it to be already, meaning in the state of being a tamim, an unblemished cow, you need it to be in that same state during the kabbalahs ha-dam. Ashkan kodshei kodshim. Okay, so that pasuk is by the par kohen Mashiach, which is kodshei kodshim kalam minolan. How do we know that the same would apply for kodshim kalam, that would have to be unblemished at the time of kabbalahs ha-dam? Rava says, Rava Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, setomim zocher ben shana. So it says by korban pesach, which is kodshim kalam, that a set tomim, a healthy, unblemished sheep, Zachar ben Shana, and it has to be a 1-year-old within its first year. Sheyei Tomim uven Shana b'sha shechitah. So it has to be unblemished and within its first year at the time of shechitah. B'kabbalah b'alacha b'zuka minayin. How do we know that the same would apply to kabbalah sadam, b'alacha sadam, zuka sadam, that it should be unblemished and also within its first year? Talmud, the Pasuk says, "Yiyeh kol havayoso lo yiyu ela tamu v'shana." That throughout the entire process of the avodah sadam, it has to be unblemished and within its first year. Abai, however, asks a kasha from a brisa. Rabbi Shua says, Rabbi Shua, kol azvachim shebatorah, all of the offerings in the Torah, the animals in the zevachs in the Torah, even if all that remains from them is a kazayis of basar or a kazayis of chelev, so certainly they've been way past the blemish state. All that's left of them is a kazayis of meat or chelev. Zorek asadam, you could still do zukas adam. So how can you be telling me that it has to be unblemished for all of the avodas sadams? You can even do zukas adam when all you have left is a kazayis basar or chelev. So tirguma aben shana. So you could say that it needs to be within its first year during all the avodas ha-dams. Now you might be thinking, I don't understand. How could the animal be getting older when it's already dead and you're doing the avodas adam? How could it be that it's within its first year when you slaughter it, and yet when you're doing Zrikas Adam, it's already in its second year? So my Rav Zosomeres Sha'os Postos B'Kachim. Well, this therefore says that actually when it comes to Kachim, it is the age is defined not by days, but by even hours. Meaning, if an animal was, if a sheep was, let's say, born on the 14th of Nisan, as Rashi says, 9 hours into the day, and now it's 1 year later, and it's the 14th of Nisan, and it's the 9th hour of the day, so it's still going to be kosher. But if it's the 10th hours of the day, it's already considered more than a year old, right? So the point is, you could technically have a scenario where at the time that you slaughtered the korban, it was within its first year, but an hour later, it's already considered in its second year. At the time of Zrikas Adam, maybe it's already no longer a year old. But what do we see? We saw that actually, the requirement was just that it had to be within its first year during all the Avodas Adam. But we saw from Rabbi Yoshua that even if just a kazayis of it is left, you could still do Zrikas Adam. So it could be blemished by the time of Zrikas Adam, at least by Kachim Kalim. So we don't have the raya from Korban Pesach for Kachim Kalim that it has to be healthy throughout all the Avodas Adams. But however, Rashi points out that you could simply say that, well, just like the Kachim Kalim, it says, what was the we had seen this lashon earlier as well in a different part of the Gemara. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Do I see what I'm looking for? Oh yeah, hold the gali b'kachei kachim gali. That since the Torah already sort of revealed by kachei kachim that it has to be unblemished, so the same thing would apply to kachim kalim as well. That it would have to, at least by the kabbalah Saddam, right? Even though Rabbi Yoshua had said that it could be, even if only a kazayis is left for the zrika Saddam, but at least by the shechitah and the kabbalah Saddam, just like by the kachei kachim, it would have to be unblemished. So also by the kachim kalim, it would have to be unblemished. Chever, wow, this daf went a lot quicker than I was expecting. Wow. Okay, that's great. Okay, well, that was Daf Chaf Hey of Masechta Zevachim. So on Daf Hey of Daf Chaf Hey of Masechta Zevachim, we learned about receiving sacrifice blood directly from the neck. That the kabbalah Saddam has to be directly from the neck. It can't be collected from the floor, as we learned in the Mishnah. If the animal bled out directly onto the floor, you can't just collect the blood and say, oh, okay, kabbalah Saddam. No, that would not work. But if it initially went into a vessel, we didn't see this explicitly in this Gemara, but I think we've seen it in earlier Gemara. If it initially went into a vessel and spilled out from the vessel, so that would be that you could collect it after that, but you can't. Initially the blood does have to be collected directly from the animal, and you can't have any knife blood in there. Also, it has to just be pure animal blood. We then discussed receiving sacrifice blood directly over the vessel. You must receive the blood directly over the vessel, right? We had said take like the vridim and stuff, like the veins and the arteries and stuff, and right over the vessel. That's to see the vessel. Blood above the vessel is considered like it has landed in the vessel, certainly at least when the vessel has a bottom. We didn't quite conclude what the halacha would be if the bottom of the vessel had fallen out before the blood landed in it. I don't think so. Channeling purification waters. This was when the water was running down the mountain and then was like channeled into the above ground swimming pool example. So it must be purified by a material that is tumah, must be channeled by a material that is tumah resistant. Let me just fix that quickly. Okay. And finally, blemishing animals between shechitah and kabbalah, don't do it. It will be pasul. That was Daf Chaf Hey of Masechta Zevachim. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good one. Cheers.